I'm going to show you how and why I wasted 10 hours of my life making an 8-second animation. Are you ready to see it? Don't blink because you might miss it. I chose to use a very nostalgic sprite sheet to use as my objects for my animation. I do think this was actually a wise choice, but oh boy, using Photoshop as my main editor for this animation, that was definitely not. The first thing I needed to establish was the scale. I wanted him to be essentially running across the bottom of the screen, and if he's too big, it's going to be way too distracting from the main content, but if he's too small, then it can kind of not be enough of a distraction, so I wanted to get the ratio right of just enough to remind you of what's going on, but also not detract from the main video. So after getting the scale approximately where I thought it should be, my next step was to get the running animation going, and I thought that, hey, it would be the best idea to put that in a different document so I have basically a grouped cell of all of the running animation, quote unquote. But as you'll see, yeah, that idea did not work very well, mostly because of how Photoshop is set up for using animations. I thought I could make groups of separate animations and then animate those smaller groups of animations in a larger animation, and it very well may be possible to do this in Photoshop, but from my research, it just wasn't working intuitively how I thought that it should be working. And this is where most of the wasted time came from. I think I probably could have made this animation in about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours using Premiere as my animation program. But it wasn't until I was about 2 hours into the animation that I realized that, yeah, Photoshop probably was not the way to go. I have made some animated GIFs before, but they were much more simple than what I'm making here. I would consider myself to be pretty good at using Photoshop, but definitely not in the animation department. I mostly use Photoshop for manipulating photos and not making animations. I know there's probably some heavy Photoshop animator watching this video right now, like screaming out of their head, going, wow, you're so dumb. This could have been done so much easier and faster. And I'll take that. I'm sure that's valid. There very well might be, but while I was making this, I was also doing research on how to make this a faster process, and I couldn't find anything that was helping me in the way that I wanted to make this animation. That whole grouping and trying to put it into the main document, yeah, that did not work, so I basically had to start all over and just start making the walking animation on the main animation panel. There's not going to be any groups, so this all has to be done one at a time like this. Which is fine because I redid this walking animation about 10 or 20 times just trying to get it right. I didn't want it exactly from the source material reference that I wanted it to be exactly like, but I did want it to be similar. How I was first animating him, he had kind of like a weird limp thing to him, almost like he needed a cane, but I tweaked it more and more, and that just has to do with moving the spacing of where he is in different areas, so nudging him to the left or nudging him to the right until getting the right pace. After finally getting this all correctly, I realized he was walking pretty slowly, and this also was a problem because I didn't want this animation to be like 30 seconds or a minute long. I wanted it to be just something very short. I really just wanted it to be a quick little thing where it's like, hey, you might want to consider doing that, but not so extensive that you're like, okay, this is now part of the video that is distracting from the actual video. Getting this walking down and the pacing and trying to get it so that he's walking smoothly across and not, speeding up or slowing down in different areas was kind of the hardest part. Just getting the initial walking across the screen. That's basically all I was trying to achieve right here, which also took up most of the time because I was fighting with Photoshop the entire time, but like it wasn't allowing me to animate in the way that I felt was intuitive. To get the pacing right, I started integrating this grid where I was going to have him walk from one end of the grid to the other and then just replicate that all the way down. The thing that frustrated me most about using Photoshop was that it has this feature where if you drop a new object or if you move it, then it will apply that to every cell in your animation, which can be very beneficial if you want the same object to persist throughout your whole entire animation, but most of this is going to be changing. This is the default for Photoshop. To me, in my opinion, it should be the default is it doesn't do that, and if you want it applied to certain frames, then you'll then add that yourself or link them yourself. That's where the propagate frame one and also the unify tools come in, but to me these things were helpful but also a hindrance at the same time. I wasted a lot of time because Photoshop was basically fighting me the whole time, where I wanted certain objects and elements to be persistent across different cells, but then others I didn't, and it was basically inverted almost every single time. So the things I wanted to stay there, they were gone or in different positions, and then the things that I want gone or in different positions, they were always there. So it was just really, really annoying. It did start working a little bit faster once I kind of understood what was going on, but still intuitively and from the defaults, I would say this is not a fun program to animate in. Even after knowing how to use it properly, it still was not super pleasant. You can also see why this is so tedious because I'm basically changing every single frame of the animation. I don't know if tween would have helped me be going from one frame to the other. I don't believe so. So this animation basically had to be made this way, where every single frame was tweaked, nudged, moved, all that. Another thing that is crazily annoying about animating in Photoshop is that certain actions that you do don't propagate through all the other frames, but then other actions that you do will, and why, I have no idea. I ran into this when I wanted the like button after it was defeated to basically kind of move up and expand and also rotate out of the way. So if you move an object on the XY coordinates, there's no propagated change to the other cells. You just move it, and then the next cell, it is in the position that it used to be. But if you want to do a transform like scaling or rotating, that is definitely propagated to all the other cells for some reason. And the propagate frame one checkbox didn't seem to have any effect. It just seems like any kind of transform to an object is going to be applied regardless of if you want that or not. So to get around that, for each rotation, incremental rotation, I needed to make a new layer that was basically separate. And of course, when you make a new layer, it propagates across all the cells, so that you have to go select all the cells, turn it off again. It just was super tedious and annoying. Now that I've basically explained my trials and tribulations with this step-by-step animating cells in Photoshop, I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant of why I even made this animation in the first place. I recently hit 1,000 subscribers, and I want to thank you guys all so much for helping me achieve this milestone and this goal. I was being realistic with my goals, so I knew that getting to 1,000 subscribers was going to take me at least a year, but most likely probably 2 years. You guys helped me hit this in 6 months, which to me was absolutely shocking and crazy, and I'm very grateful for that. And honestly, this probably would have happened even more quickly had I just reminded you guys to subscribe to the channel. How I personally consume YouTube, I absolutely do not like it when creators are constantly barraging me to smash the like button and subscribe to their channel when I already know that if I like the video, I'm gonna hit like. If I want to see more videos from you, I'm gonna subscribe to it. I don't need to be reminded or coaxed or incentivized or anything like that. But I also understand I am probably not the normal consumer of YouTube video. There is a reason why on most YouTube videos there is going to be at least one and probably many call to actions, and that is because unfortunately it works. If you look at all the data and all the analytics, you will see clearly that when you're asked to like, people like. When you're asked to subscribe, people subscribe. It makes you wonder why people aren't just like, hey, send me money, or hey, pay my bills. But there is Patreon and other things like that, so I guess that works too. As per all of the metrics show, if you want something, then ask for it and you'll probably get it. Because it would personally annoy myself to do it, I don't want to ask you guys constantly to like, subscribe, and comment, but the data also shows that if I want that to happen, then I have to ask for it. Because when it comes down to it, I actually do want this channel to grow. And no, not because I want to be rich or famous or anything like that. To me, it is all about the projects, and the bigger this channel gets, the more I can invest into bigger and more complex projects and also provide you with better quality video. Which is why I dumped so much time into making this animation. This is also just an experiment because I want to see if dropping in this call to action animation is actually going to make any difference, and I honestly think that it will, but I also don't know. I've been seeing more and more of these call to action animations, and to me this is a much more middle ground as opposed to just shoving it in your face and asking outright, but also not asking at all. To me this is kind of like the sweet spot between those two things. Of course, I could have easily just downloaded one of these pre-made animations from thousands of websites that offer them, but I wanted to do something different. I personally hate seeing these pre-made animations on creators' videos because most of the time they just look really bad. Either it's low resolution or parts of the background are not cut out all the way. It just looks really bad. Then on top of that, they'll have some very distracting sound effects going on, like the ding when you hit the bell is like from a 1950s gas station or something. It just, everything about it I despise. I'm not putting sound effects on this animation, by the way, even though I showed you that in the beginning. That was just so that I didn't have 10 seconds of silence at the beginning of the video, but when this is going to be playing in my videos at random spots, it's not going to have any annoying or distracting sound effects. I just feel like if you're going to be asking people to do something for me, which you already have because you're asking them to spend their time on watching your videos, I think that just investing some time, at least a little bit, especially because this is going to be a recurring piece of animation that you're using throughout all of your videos. I just feel like if you're going to be asking your viewers to do something for you, the least you can do is try to give back something to them. My thoughts on this particular animation was at least it was something novel or nostalgic or cute or something that is just more than, you know, a copy and paste job from some website that I downloaded it from. I didn't mind spending this much time on it because it is a recurring asset that I can use over and over again, so that time spent is not just for one-time use. Hopefully you guys do find it interesting or at least cool, and if you are creating your own content, maybe it will inspire you to create your own animation. As much as I struggle making this, I did have a fun time, and I probably will make at least a couple more in the future. Although I will not be using Photoshop to make them. If you want to see those videos, let me know. I have no idea how this is going to be received. Probably most people won't care because it's not an e-bike, but I did want to document at least some of the other creative things that I'm doing on this channel. Let me know what you guys think of the animation below. Was it worth wasting 10 hours of my time? I'm not sure. Anyways, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for subscribing and getting me to 1,000 subscribers. I also really appreciate that. I have about 4 new projects in the works right now that I'm going to be releasing pretty soon, at least the start of them. So I have a ton of more content coming up, so stay tuned and I will see you in the next one.